Oh, yeah. Welcome to WSJU Radio. Rafique Louison back on the dial alongside a special guest right here. This man's literally been all over St. John's, a student, and apparently he's had two different stints working at St. John's, and he also worked at Fordham as well. Ed Kull, who's actually the Director of Athletics here at St. John's University. Welcome aboard.
Great to be here. Excited to be a part of this, and good to catch up with you and talk everything St. John's athletics.
Yeah, why not? I mean, St. John's, judging by your background, you're literally all over St. John's as a student because after getting a bachelor's degree from Stony Brook, you actually went there for a master's and a degree called a doctorate of education. And while we're on that subject, why don't you tell a little bit people about, for those that don't know about a doctorate of education, how different is it from any particular doctorate degree or master's degree or bachelor's degree?
Yeah, so great to be back. Born and raised in Queens, Middle Village, Queens. Went to Archbishop Malloy High School right over here in Jamaica, not too far from here on Manton Street off of Queens Boulevard. So St. John's is always near and dear as a kid and going to St. John's games. And my first real experience was Midnight Madness for Felipe Lopez at a very young age and been loved and hooked on St. John's athletics ever since. Unfortunately, probably wasn't good enough of a high school athlete to play here, so played baseball at Stony Brook University. Lucky enough to have an athletic director there who was another St. John's alum and man, Dick Laskowski, who got me a grad assistantship here at St. John's and got me started with my continued love and affinity for the institution here. Did my MBA at the Tobin School of Business, which was a great experience, and then, yes, my doctorate in higher educational leadership. So, focused on working in academia in terms of educational leadership and helping kind of a little bit well-round a little bit of my business experience and my business background or my college athletics background to get a little bit more in terms of an educational leadership approach and understanding of how higher ed institutions are run, as well as even to the level of school districts. I actually did some of my intern hours in Plain Edge School District. Had to do a whole semester with their athletic director, so I shadowed and followed him. So good to kind of see really an educational experience in terms of higher ed, but also within a educational school district, which is middle school through high school.
Why don't you tell me a little about the importance of having leadership in education, whether it's in sports or in education?
I think it's everything. I think whether it's student athletes, whether it's students, whether it's staff, coaches, whether it's fellow administrators and colleagues, I think everybody's always looking for leadership direction, looking for a vision, looking for clarity, looking for an inspiration, looking for some motivation, looking for energy and enthusiasm to grab hold onto in terms of what their job is, being reminded of how much they're appreciated and loved, being reminded about how much their efforts and their commitment means to our department, our program, to our overall university. They need to be reminded and understand what the collaboration and the alignment is top to bottom, and it's not just about their individual soccer program or our individual ticket office trying to sell tickets to an Iona game on Saturday at Madison Square Garden, but how it actually aligns with our overall vision and strategy in terms of helping our athletics department, helping our student body, helping our student athletes, but helping overall St. John's University. And that's been kind of a key focus and vision for me in terms of reorganizing, but also reestablishing a strategic plan and a vision for us and making sure it aligns with Father Shanley's overall vision for this institution. Because if athletics isn't just winning and losing, how are we connecting with the community? How are we engaging alumni? How are we really representing the tri-state area to the best of its ability?
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. The fact that you're able to give back what you learned in education from the minute that you set foot in a St. John's game during the Felipe Lopez days, and all the way up till now. Just recently, they win the Big East tournament and actually won a tournament game, ending a 25-year conference tournament title drought. Now, well, in between those two stints at St. John's, I mean, well, you once had a stint, they went from 11 and 17, and then, well, before coming back here, where it all started. After graduating Stony Brook for a bachelor's degree, you also had a stint working in Fordham's athletic department, uplifting some of the athletes there. Like, how does it feel getting back everything you learned at St. John's University as a student and in a full-time athletic director and made different sports positions in athletics department and marketing to Fordham University? well, me and you actually first met, by the way, spoiler alert. But I mean, you pretty much helped me reconnect with those I connected with at Fordham because I managed to get a master's degree there. And Joe DeBari was a phenomenal human being and working with some of the top athletes that played at Fordham as well as the future of media.
Yeah, so St. John's for me is extremely home and comfortable, not just because of my stints or being an alum or growing up in Queens. I'm a first-generation college graduate, so I really connect and I deal with our student body. We just walked through Marillac Hall, and it feels like really warm and comfortable as if I was 20 years ago doing that. And I feel very much connected with the student body who's from this area, New York City, a lot of them commuters, also first-generation college graduates, many of them obviously Pell-eligible students, which is half our population that we're servicing. And that to me is very, very, I don't ever lose sight of that. It really is connection of who I am, where I'm from, and trying to give back to all students that came through New York City the same way I did, and the New York City school system the same way I did. Leaving St. John's, I actually had a little stint with the NFL in between St. John's and Fordham, a little bit when we had a little bit of a presidential change, and enjoyed the NFL. Amazing experience. Everybody returns your phone call at the NFL in terms of what it represents and how big Sundays are, and now it's Thursdays and Fridays and Mondays and sometimes Saturdays. So we know how popular football is, which is relative to college athletics and the issues we're dealing with in college athletics. But I missed campus. And while at the NFL, headhunter, a gentleman I knew from Massachusetts was running the search at Fordham and kind of gave me a call. And though I grew up in the tri-state and even in the CHSAA often plays playoff games at Fordham, which I did at Molloy and got to spend some time there playing baseball games there, didn't really know a ton about it. I've been to the Bronx a bunch, didn't know anything about the Lincoln Center campus, which is a beautiful piece of property there right by Columbus Circle and Central Park. And I was like, I really wasn't interested necessarily in getting back to campus at that point in time, but I took he asked kind of a favor. I took the opportunity to do an interview. My first day there, I did lunch with Frank McLaughlin, and he gave me his own tour, and Frank was extremely inspirational for me. Frank kind of knew right away, like, this would be a good fit for you. I think you'd be a really strong athletic director here. I think you could help us. And Jack Kaiser, who was a mentor of mine at the time, had called me about it too. He thought it was a good idea, in terms of getting experience at Fordham and getting kind of jumping into that situation. And I fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the school. Tremendous alumni base. Tremendous mission there in terms of the Jesuit side, a little different from our Vincentian views, but a lot of similarities. And it's a magical place, Fordham. A lot of great people, tremendous communications program, as you know. They do not have a communications school, but they have obviously a large public radio station. They have a great history going back to Mike Breen and Michael Kay and Jim O'Connell and obviously Andrew O'Connell and the O'Connell families and Gregory and some special people that have come through there to this day. And I just fell in love with the magic of the place. They really kind of flipped me the keys to the car and kind of let me do some different things in terms of reorganizing the athletics department. We made some coaching changes, kind of invested a little bit more in basketball there, and whether that was Kyle Neptune or Keith Ergo, and we had a magical run there. And it's a very special place to me that'll always be near and dear. But I could not say no to come back to St. John's, and it being really personal to me and my family. St. John's represents that for me. So a lot of great learnings, a lot of good things I bring back from Fordham to St. John's. But I've been lucky because obviously I've been born and raised in this beautiful city, and to work for both of those institutions, be athletic director of both those institutions, I'm very, very blessed.
Yeah, it's really a blessing. And looking back at everything you just talked about, from having done to Frank to getting that interview to actually working for the university right after working for the NFL, it all boils down to networking. Why don't you tell the listeners right now and the people watching from our YouTube channel and the social media platforms how important was the networking aspect of everything you've done during your career in sports and athletics and education?
Networking has been an extremely important part. So even early on at St. John's, meeting with and connecting with Mike Rapoli, our alum, which is how I left the first time to work at Vitamin Water, which eventually became Coca-Cola when we sold the company to Coke. So I was blessed to get another MBA or 2 MBAs, and those experiences being in a startup company, being an entrepreneur, then working for Coke, top 5 brand in the world, and I had the London Olympics and South African World Cup and LeBron James, and just a tremendous education that really I think has helped me in terms of my outlook and perspective of college athletics today, which is it is big business, it's professional sports. And I think that's kind of a focus. How do we continue to evolve from where we are right now in terms of a mid-major, kind of a small market athletics program to a professional sports team, and a lot of revenue conversations. I think I found early on not only relationships and identifying good people you want to work with or mentor or kind of feed off of, but I realized early it's about generating dollars and income. The more you can generate and bring in dollars, whether it be asking donors for money, asking sponsors to sponsor a program, or selling tickets, or trying to find dollars, the more important, and it differentiated me from others in terms of strategy. But it's business, and I think it's a lot different than the Jack Kaisers and Frank McLaughlin's before me, where it was all about the student athlete and all about compliance and rules and rosters and league play. It's now more focused for me every day about how do we find more dollars in revenue to help support the student athletes in a different way, but make sure that their experience and their resources are top class to compete with the best throughout the country.
Exactly. And on top of the student athletes and the student body in general, even when you came back to St. John's, up until this point, you've also had many different ways of people get involved with sports in many different ways. I mean, I've had my involvement when I got to be part of student broadcasting, and prior to that, I was covering sports of my own through my platform, Nothing But That Sports Talk. And it was really appreciated connecting with you, networking with you, all the way towards having that opportunity to interview people and get back to what I learned after elevating myself in this sports media landscape. And now, seeing St. John's, they have a Women in Sports Association, they have a Sports Managers Association. Those opportunities are good ways for students, athletes, or students in general to get involved with sports.
Yeah, you are a perfect example. I know we connected at Fordham, or we first initially got connected at Fordham, and you know the attitude and the philosophy of New Yorkers. You're a hustler, you're a grinder, like the rest of New York City, like I am as well. And what I love most about our student body is, obviously, I talked to them being first generation. I talked to them obviously maybe not coming from the best amount of means or resources. But they're hungry, they're driven, they have a chip on their shoulder, they want an opportunity. And I love our sports management program here at St. John's. I've known about that for many years and always had the interest in working in sports or sports business. And, you know, we were one of the first schools in the country to start sports management here. And that's something I don't lose sight of in terms of how we can continue to leverage that and build that, especially being in the geographical location and the best city in the world for business and sports business. I got to teach sports marketing there as an adjunct for 8 years and got to interact with a lot of students, and that's been the personal pleasure of mine. But I always say, you know, when you're talking about Harvard, Yale, Columbia, NYU, whatever school everybody wants to talk about academically, I take a St. John's kid all day and every day because they have the drive, they have the will, they have the fight. They didn't grow up. They didn't grow up with having everything. They're hungry, and I think that passion, that fire, makes them a well-rounded individual that I want to work for me every day and all day. And I stand by that for our student athletes. I stand by that for our general population here on campus. It's something special that you can't teach at an Ivy League institution, and I think that's what makes St. John's kids that much more special.
Yeah, they're a lot more special, especially the student athletes. Who obviously recently they had the elevation of growing the Big East, winning the Big East regular season title and conference title. And then before that, when you was working at Fordham University, you witnessed the Fordham men's basketball team go as deep as they could in the Lexington tournament at the Barclays Center. And in both of those elements, and I bring those up because both those elements, you see the fan engagement. You see the work that elevated after you gave back to what you learned during your time as a St. John's student.
Yeah, whether it's selling out the Barclays Center for Fordham at the A-10 tournament or selling out MSG for our men's basketball games, there is nothing that compares to engaging a fan base, engaging alumni, engaging students What other event on campus will get 1,600 students the way we had on Saturday for Ole Miss to come on campus and be together? Nothing. And that's the power of basketball in this city. That's the power of athletics here. And that's why the role it plays is a true major source, the source of school spirit and school pride. And I want that for our entire student body. I want them to feel connected. I want them to wear their T-shirt with pride. I want them to have fun and enjoy New York City and experience that and to cheer on their program and feel really connected no matter who we play. And I think that's a value proposition that's often underestimated. So we're trying to continue to assess and monitor that, because I think those numbers are important. I think those numbers are important in terms of a student having fun, engaging, meeting friends, meeting obviously being active and engaged in the campus. And hopefully it helps retention. Hopefully it helps future enrollment. And that's the role and responsibility I think it plays that's much larger than wins and losses and the global place it plays. And think about it, all the alums that are connected to our program, all the alums that are generously giving and donating to our program right now, all the alums that are helping support our revenue share for our men's and women's basketball programs right now. They had an amazing experience as a student here, and basketball played into that. They have fond memories of traveling to watch the team play on a road trip. They have fond memories of going to the Garden or fond memories of going to Alumni Hall here. That's what I want for our current student body. That's engagement that will live on forever. No disrespect to the chemistry lab, no disrespect to the philosophy class and the professor that they had there, but that's not going to be the same engagement level that athletics and basketball brings to our student body. And I think that's the power we want to continue to promote and leverage any way possible.
Yeah, you have to continue to promote it, especially since they're going to build a training facility at St. John's in like a year and a half from this point. This gives athletes more opportunities to elevate themselves, not just as athletes, but as human beings and students at St. John's University.
Yes, we are breaking ground on a new basketball facility, probably long overdue in terms of our peers in the Big East Conference and the schools that we're fighting with in terms of a basketball competition level. And hopefully it's going to really also benefit the entire population. So Taffner will be renovated, opportunity to be utilized for general recreational space and general fitness space for all of our students, especially those res life living on campus, the 3,000 beds we have on campus. I think it's, again, important we're using the power and momentum of basketball, the power and momentum of basketball fundraising support to benefit the rest of the institution, the rest of the general population. And I truly believe in recreational intramural sports. I believe in fitness. I think this generation is so much more savvy, educated on what they put in their body, how they train, how they exercise, how they live their life, much better than I was in college. And I think that to use the power of basketball to improve all aspects of St. John's University.
Exactly, especially since it improves the media coverage, because it gets media people like WSJU, WRED TV, and the Social Board more interested and invested in covering some of the best athletes in St. John's. And not to mention, it elevates the PR department in trying to get more media people as much as they can, or people in general, invested in St. John's sports and athletics.
I want the student body, whether it be the radio station here, which is incredible, TV station that's down the hall here, those on social media, the Women in Sports Club, the Red Zone Club, the Sports Management Club, all of our sports management students, I want them all to be engaged, involved, feel like they have a laboratory to get some experience in and work in. As everybody knows, we need all the free help and free labor that we can get, and we're providing experience to our student body. And how do we make sure that we're leveraging St. John's, specifically St. John's basketball, whether it be ESPN Plus in our streams for all of our Olympic sports, but social media platforms, our website updates, how we are engaging on campus. I think there's so many opportunities. The tentacles of this thing are huge in terms of athletics to benefit all of our student body and all of our marketing communication folks throughout campus.
Exactly. That's all we want. We're all trying to do our best to make sure we get involved on campus one way or another, whether we're coming here, regardless of what degree we're doing while we're coming here. And as we approach the end of the semester, and we're now 2 semesters in your tenure at St. John's, the future is looking bright for St. John's. I mean, we already had, like I mentioned before, we already had the men's basketball with the Bees tournament, and the women's team started off like 8-2. They just won yesterday in a compromise win against Providence. That was a very exciting victory.
Great victory yesterday, yes. Great comeback. Would have 23 points in the fourth quarter there, so that was wonderful to see. Coming off a very successful Cayman Islands tournament. Prior to that, beating, I think, number 18.
22 in the country,
Oklahoma State, yes, and Joe Girardi's daughter there. So some really good wins early for Coach Tartamella. And really strategically an increased investment in our rev share for our women's program. So allowing Coach Tartamella to hit the portal hard and get some student athletes here of a higher level of talent based on his recruiting and his evaluation process. And I think we have positioned both our men's and women's basketball program very successfully for the Big East. As you know, the men hopefully today will be ranked 21 in the country, or at least in the 20s in terms of national ranking. And the women, obviously, great start. I'm really, really excited about the future of both these programs. You know, the men obviously have played one of the most toughest schedules in the history of St. John's in terms of the quality of opponents, whether that be in Vegas or Alabama, Ole Miss, or even Michigan, who's obviously had a great start. And again, what Coach Patino has represented in terms of credibility and accountability has elevated this program so significantly. Most amount of MSG games in our history will take place this year. We're soon going to announce a women's game versus UConn at MSG for March 1st. So we're excited about some of these initiatives that truly are showing the commitment and elevation of our program. But I'm being honest with you. Obviously, I'm bullish on our programs. I'm bullish on men's and women's basketball. I'm bullish on the amount of money we're investing in these programs. But I'm bullish because I know the rewards it's going to mean for the rest of this campus, the rest of this institution. And I think that's truly what excites me, is that basketball and both our programs are going to elevate everything we're trying to do on this campus, whether that be retention rates, graduation rates, or applications and enrollment. We are truly aligned, and we are truly a partner in this process of improving St. John's.
Exactly. I mean, it's nice to see that we're thinking about having the women's game be at the Garden, especially since I remember when I first came here, my first game was actually on Johnny Day, where the men's and women's both had a doubleheader, and I got to call the game against Creighton with Michael Skurlick, and being able to call games at the Garden's amazing. Now I understand how Mike Breen and Tyler and Monica McNutt feel. I mean, just sitting in stage here, they sat at where they're calling Knicks games, and it just felt incredible, even as a student, for a student radio broadcast. It's just great to see that I'm able to call something that you put a lot of investment into elevating for men's and women's basketball.
MSG is a wonderful partner. We are lucky and blessed to have that relationship. I think everybody who walks into MSG, including myself, quickly gets butterflies, and the hair on their arm stands up, or the hair on their neck stands up in terms of excitement, what that building means. I know we've tried things in the past in terms of UBS and Barclays, and as we know, obviously we're limited on campus in terms of capacity and modernization of that building. But MSG is special for college basketball, special for the Big East, special for basketball in our country, what it represents in terms of the history, whether that be the Knicks or college hoops. It truly is the mecca of basketball, and there's no place we would rather be. There's no place we belong, and continuing to try to find ways of leveraging that relationship, not only monetarily in terms of generating revenue, not only playing more games there or selling sponsorships or selling more merchandise there, but whether that be internships, whether that be advertising, whether that be some of our licensing initiatives in terms of some of the programs there. But how do we continue to utilize that relationship with MSG and leverage St. John's? It's a big recruiting tool for both coaches, men and women. It's a big part of Coach Tartamella wanting to play UConn there. Obviously, in terms of Coach Patino bringing in recruits, MSG is a sales position like no other for us.
I'm not mad about that. I mean, we need more women's basketball games at Madison Square Garden. That's the only nitpick for that. But other than that, it's good that we're getting some games at Carter-Seca Arena as well, because Carter-Seca is actually the main home for St. John's. But Madison Square Garden, it's just something about playing at the Garden for the men's and women's, the same basketball court that the New York Liberty once played at before moving to the Barclays Center, that really gets you invested.
Yeah, women's sports in general is blowing up, as you know. Whether that's women's basketball right now, whether that's volleyball on a national stage, whether that be softball, and I'm always attached to ESPN's coverage during the NCAA tournament, or even now the growth of flag football for women. Right, we're going to see that be a varsity sport very soon. I think we need to support that. We need to get behind it and invest. And yes, we're lucky that it's a St. John's UConn game. I think UConn being number one in the country and their excitement, what they've done, what they've built, and what Gino Auriemma means to college basketball or basketball in general for women is ridiculous. And Coach Tartamella's had a heck of a run here. I think we need to continue to support and elevate him in that program. And MSG has been willing to do that and is a great partner. So Sunday night, March 1st. Buckle up at 7 p.m. for us, or 7:30 p.m. for us there. National TV as well. And I think part of the new TNT True TV, national TV push. And we're lucky that, we have those resources, but I think it's important we get behind that and we spread that message. Hopefully every student on campus will be there, as well as employees and staff.
Exactly. And one more advice before I let you go.
Please.
One more question before I let you go, because I understand we're limited on time. What advice you have for anybody that wants to work in athletics?
My advice for anyone who wants to work in athletics, and I'll tell you this, by the way, always have time for this. This is important that we are communicating and sharing our message internally and externally. So always here to talk and help and mentor students. I love teaching here so much because of the opportunity to interact with students. I wish even being an AD, I love spending more time with our student body. Every Monday night we have a SAC meeting. That's probably the favorite part of my week, is interacting with student athletes and not being bogged down in meetings about finances, HR, or budget issues. But my advice is always this. Follow your passion, follow your heart, do what you love, and you're never working a day in your life. I've been blessed to do that. It's a lot of hours, a lot of commitment, but I love what I do, and I jump out of bed every day to do my job, and that's always been a testament of how much I love what I do. And then you'll find money by doing that. Secondly, I always tell those who want to work in sports, try to think differently. As you know, there's probably 1,000. I'm underselling it. 1,000 intern applications to work for the New York Yankees and become the next Brian Cashman, and I understand that, and I love that. But maybe think a little differently. There's a lot going on in the sports business. Will that be digital piece? Will that be gambling? Will that be some of the streaming pieces or different things that are taking place? How do you look at different avenues of sports business that maybe are not as congested, not as populated, and get your foot in the door? So thinking a little differently instead of chasing the same job opening or internship that everybody else is. The brand side, right? A lot of companies are getting involved, and that's everything from insurance companies to banking companies to auto dealerships, right? Like, how do I work in sports and get some experience that may not be directly the common way? Be open to new ideas, be open to new experiences. I think you want to continue to eliminate what you don't want to do is as important as figuring out what you do want to do. The more you figure out, I don't want to work in that part of sports, I don't want to work in that area of the sports, the more you get obviously more focused on working in the area you do. Taken me a long time. I've bounced around a lot in sports. Most people do. And everything from the brand side to the team side to the league side to where I've worked at a facility before, minor league baseball before. The Mets was always a passion of mine. You start continuing to figure out what you do want to do and try to find your niche. It's not as cut and dry or as simple as people want. And you must be comfortable working crazy hours, crazy weekends. Otherwise, this is not going to be for you.
Yeah. And that's how we wrap it up here at WSJU Radio. I'm Rafique Louison. Thank you for stopping by, Ed Kull. I really appreciate your wisdom in working in sports.
My pleasure.
I love that you continue to listen to some of our best shows at WSJU Sports. And don't forget, coming up this week, we got Iona taking on St. John's. And for the women's side, St. John's will take it on Hofstra. This is going to be crazy as we go along the rest of the season. This is Rafique Louison on WSJU Radio.